Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you're at in the world. Just want to give you a few minutes. For everybody to join. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Just gonna give everybody a couple more minutes to join here. As everybody's getting ready for, at least in the US, getting ready for a weekend, a long weekend with the holiday coming up. Just want to give everybody a few minutes to join the lunch and learn today. And Sabrina, just to confirm, we will not be having a lunch and learn on Thursday, correct?
That is correct.
Great. I feel like, Sabrina, we need some music to play right here as we're waiting for people to join.
Yeah, some elevator music or something.
Yeah, something. Great, so we're gonna go ahead and get started today. We do have one pre-submitted question, and I see that individual has joined. So Sabrina, can you add Terry to something to speak? Thank you.
Hi there, can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent. I'm wondering about Tableau integration. I've got a client who is very happy with decisions, but would like to be able to kind of visualize the data a bit more. I'm wondering if that would be like a database integration or an API call. Somebody have any experience with that?
Yes, I do have experience with Tableau. It all depends on what data do you want to expose to Tableau? Are you wanting to expose like flow data, flow tracking data, or just what data is stored inside decisions? I don't understand that. I don't know their process well enough to know that. But really, what data are you trying to expose to Tableau?
It would be data from the database, not process information.
Okay. Then I would probably suggest there's two ways to go about it with Tableau. There's either a direct API integration.
Mm-hmm.
So you can expose it through, just like you do decisions, you can expose like a fetch call inside decisions through an API call, or you can do database integration. It all depends on really, are you running Tableau in the cloud, or you have an on-site Tableau install with the client?
I don't know yet. I know that you guys are hosting our decisions instance. So how difficult would it be to expose our database to Tableau? Like
that's going to, I would suggest doing a
API
and just have Tableau. Have you dealt with Tableau's API connectors before?
No, I haven't.
They do have an API connector, which would call decisions as a data source and use an API call. But I would suggest that, especially if we're hosting it.
All right, that's what I thought the answer would be, but I wanted to get some expert advice. I appreciate it.
No problem. So do you have any more questions, Terry, before we open up to the field?
Nope, I'm all good.
Great. Great. So does anyone else have questions? Please feel free to raise your hand in the Zoom chat. So to be able to do that, you simply just go down to the bottom of the screen, your Zoom panel, and be able to raise your hand. Or you can post a question in the Q&A, and I think we have one. So is there a step where you can complete a case using a button on a dashboard? So when you mean complete a case, are you meaning changing the state of the case?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So I have the process I'm building. It's a case that has different states. There's kind of a final one before the complete state. There's kind of for the management review, they have their own form that they would complete the state. So what I'm trying to do is kind of I have that all set up kind of as itself within a case entity, and I have trigger flows and it all working there. But I was looking to kind of create for that final state for the management review to have their own dashboard to where they could access it, and then have a button on that dashboard that could complete the case. And so I was seeing if there's a way to do that. If you can complete a case within a dashboard.
Absolutely, you absolutely can. Just my question for you: are you looking for like multi-approved, the approved manager approved multi things, or just one thing?
Just one thing. So it's like, yeah, it's going to be eventually the case goes to you know, pending management review,
Mhm.
but I'm looking to have, like, you know, with a dashboard that anytime that manager can kind of go, no matter what state that case is in, they could go to that dashboard, and if they wanted to complete it, they can. So just kind of a place for them, and if there's a way to, yeah, complete that.
I'm just creating a simple case entity here. Give a second to create, and absolutely there is a way. So I'm going to add in one more state and call this in process. So I have 3 states here. I have started, and processed, and completed. Now I'm assuming your state probably has a lot more different things on here.
Yeah.
So all you have to do is add a user action. So I'm gonna add a user action and call this complete work. And on this user action, I'm gonna pop up a form. And have you dealt with user actions on dashboards before, Mike?
Yeah, for like one instance. So
Okay.
I'm still kind of learning.
Okay. Second. So what I'm doing here, just so you understand, is I'm actually creating a user action on this status, and then I'm saying, okay, if I select approve, it goes to actually meant to completed status. If I don't select approve, it goes to in process status still. So now if I create a flow, sorry, I'm just trying to go through. Okay, so I'm assuming you're doing this, collect some information, and then you're going through, going to your case entity, my test one. I'm going to create my test entity right here. course, I would never do this in column constants, but I am just for this demonstration. So right now I'm simply creating the case right here, increasing the case, and then right here. So now all this should work now. Sorry, it took me a little bit to actually create all this. I would debug this. So now I've created some data here. And I'm going to create a report. And right there you can see my case report with my stuff in process and the state. Now, if I look at my test folder right here, I can right click and complete work. So from the actual, and then right here is your thing, and it goes approved. Of course, I don't have a refresh dashboard. So in here, it should go into the completed status. So does that answer your question, Mike, of how you can set that up as a user action on the actual case entity state you have?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Thank
to
you.
show you a better in action. So that should at least be able to just have a dashboard report. And of course, you can control which is visible to them, if it's assigned to them or not. And then you right click and be able to do that.
Okay. So this is a report on the dashboard?
Yep,
Okay.
it's a report sent on the dashboard, which, you know, my lovely UI design here is really white space galore.
Yeah.
But it's simply, you know, build a report where then you have user actions. They can right click and then complete the work, do the approval, do the decline, whatever they need to do. And they can do it directly from a dashboard.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I'll go ahead and take a stab at it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem. All right, David, I was wondering if you could dive into batch inserting entities. I've seen documentation, but it's still unclear how to implement it. Also, I have a twist. I need to number and keep the records in order. Okay, so you need to batch insert records.
Yeah, so I have a, I guess they refer to it as an EDI file, which just stands for electronic data interchange, that goes between one of our clients and a bank, and it's the purpose of it is to transmit check information. so the
Mhm.
bank can print their checks, but the file is sequenced in such a way that I need to keep the order of it for those records, because I basically want to put that into I want to process it into a table or into a data structure so that I can work with it easier to be able to get some summary information from it, like counts, and then basically parse a row with a specific identifier on it. I figured it'd be easier just to table it and work with the data that way on a fetch or something like that. So I created a data structure to be able to dump that into, and I created a flow that it does what I need it to do, but it takes an hour or two to be able to load that up and process 800,000 records. So I was trying to look into other ways that I could maybe handle that, and I was thinking either that batch insert may work, or I was trying to, at one time I had tried to run flows for list, and that ate up a bunch of memory and bombed out. And then I also was looking into uh, a branch for each chunking step. But the problem with that one is it doesn't, like, there has to be an async flow on the other side of it, right?
Yeah.
But when I
Well,
go into that async flow, I don't have a way to reference like an index number from the outside of it, if that makes any sense at all.
it does. So these 800,000 records you're trying to upload, them in one batch insert, correct? And then keep
Well,
them all in the same order.
yeah, I mean, even if I have to chunk it and break it up, that's totally fine. I guess my thing is, like, the way I think about it would be like if I did a branch for each chunking step and I said take them 10 or 20 lines at a time, I don't, there's no way for me to guarantee that it processes and writes the first 10 records before it writes the first 30 records, because I assume that it comes up with some sort of optimized execution plan for it and just goes to town, and there's no way to govern which records go in there first, right? If that makes any sense.
Oh,
Because like the file itself doesn't have row numbers in it, it just has record identifiers. So if, for example, I have a file with 10 checks in it, the check record itself is a 10, and then the detail of each check underneath that, it's kind of layered or nested, I guess. Like the detail is either a 60 or a 70 number, but there's no other identifier other than that, right? It basically resets at each check. So, but I need them all like indexed, so to speak, like from 1 to however many lines there are, 250 or whatever.
okay. So how I would handle that, I would create a data structure so it doesn't take up much memory.
Right.
And I would create a flow structure. So what a flow structure is, it doesn't store it to the database, but this creates the structure to use within the flow, and call this check info or whatever you need to store.
Okay.
And then for each run, I would create an index number and call it integer.
Right.
And then then call it check ID. And put just some notifiers, name, whatever you need to do, save the data. Just so you have a way to uniquely define it.
Yeah.
Create a flow real quick. And now, how do you import in decisions? Is it a CSV file you upload? Is it just
Yeah, so the step I'm using right now is a read all lines from text file. And then I'm just giving it the directory path where that's saved at to pull it.
Okay. So after that step, because I don't have a text file here, what I would run would be, I would go ahead and parse through that text file. I'm assuming that text file parsing is what's taking some time up. correct?
That step actually doesn't take too much, maybe 10 to 15 seconds or so to basically it takes all the lines in the file and outputs it as a list of strings.
Mm-hmm. So then I would go in. Got too many data extensions in this one. So what I would do is simply use that, and let's see, just I'll do a for each. Because you want for each line in the list. And then right here, it'll pass out an item index.
Right.
And then after that, and the item index should be that. And then I would just use a create list. You can update the list too. It depends on how you want to do this. Create list step.
Okay.
Which I don't like. I'm trying to think the best way to do this to keep it simple. Use a create data step and this create and call this and just create the data point and just build the data you have here. And what you do is you parse through it, and then of course you have the index number as you pass in as the index number of each file upload.
Right.
And you still say it's taking an hour after, even after doing this, because are you doing a for each step? Or are you trying to batch insert them all at one time now?
Yeah. So originally I built something very similar to this, and it's just taking a long time to for each over 800,000 rows or items in that list.
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to think of a way that I could either split that up or I guess get it to go faster. So that's kind of where I went to the run flow for list, or this guy, the branch for each chunking step.
So I would do and go ahead and course collection is another bad one. Let's go ahead and do. And by creating the index on the list, it's actually going to it should respect the index of the list. So right here's my check info. And then low and do the list. And it should inspect the list right there of each 10 items. And of course, then you can, for each 10 items, you do that flow. But by creating the list and creating the index, you should be fine. And it should export them out based on the index of the list.
I see. So, okay. Yeah, I see what you're doing there. That makes sense. The initial for each step though
is creating the list.
Yeah.
And creating the index of the list. So you add the index to the list. You also can do trying to think what's the best way, because you're dealing with 800,000 records. That's the problem I'm trying to think through.
Right. Yeah, because it just takes so long for the initial for each to go over that many rows. So I was thinking, how can I guess basically split that load up is where I kind of ran across y'all's documentation on I guess batch processing and that run flows for list or this branch for each chunking step.
I would use the branch. The run flows for list is a memory hog, especially it's great, for 20, 30 list, but 800,000, that's getting a little, the branch for each step is best because it will run multi-threaded.
Right.
So that you can branch off for each, 1,000 records, 10,000 records, whatever you find that sweet spot is. I'm trying to think the best way to create this list, because what you can do is then, create your data and say, okay, I want to fetch in list. Is your list always 800,000 or does it vary?
It's variable.
Okay. Then what we could do is then get me see if I find this one little. I'm trying to find this one little step. I don't want that one. It's not the one I'm looking for. I'm looking for a step where I can actually get the count of lists. And then what you can do there is run it into a formula and say, okay, I'm going to pull out the first 1,000, pull out the first 10,000, and keep that list in order and do a for each loop on that. Does that make sense? It's more complex. It's more complicated because you're having for each and for each, but at least it'll
Does
get you.
your regular for each chunking step should basically do that for me, right? Because the regular for each chunking step gives me it outputs the index of what it's doing.
Correct. But I'm just trying to think of if this doesn't work as you see fit, I'm trying to figure out another way to say, okay, I want to get records 1 through 1,000 now, then get records 1,001 through
Yeah.
2,000. I'm opening it up to any more ideas anybody else from Decisions has on the call, because I'm trying to think through this, because this is
Yeah.
800,000 records in the text file. We can do it. It's just what's the best approach. But it's something I'll take back to the team, David, and get you an answer on a better answer, because there's a lot of different ways to do this.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
Branch for each step chunking is the best way to go.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. So when I tried to implement this my own, maybe I don't know if I had like writer's block or something, but because like I said before, I can't necessarily guarantee, because I mean, I assume that if you're chunking it, if you're using this step, it's just grabbing each 10 and then processing it against the async flow that you put after this, right?
Correct.
And I wouldn't necessarily have control over whether it wrote the third set of 10 or the first set of 10 first. So I would need a way to, like you said, grab the first 1,000, but I need a way to know what the first 1,000 are. And because this doesn't necessarily output an index along with it, then there's no way for me to know inside that async flow which set of 10 that I have or 1,000 that I have, right?
Well, you can always export the list of what is an async flow, actually what it processed. You can always export that. That's where I think if you really need this to be structured is you create the list beforehand, and then you create, okay, my list is actually do you know how to create a list within a list, or have you ever done that before?
Yeah. I mean, you should just be able to make your data structure as whatever element in there as a list, and then you make it as a list of lists in when you do your create data step.
And that's where I'm thinking you do is you create a list of lists and say, then you have one list you're parsing through there. That might be your first 1,000 records, and your second list is your second 1,000 records, and actually doing that for each step.
Oh, I see. So you're basically just building your own index on the outside.
Building your own index on the outside. So what I'm doing is saying, okay, I create for each element, and then I stop at 1,000, then do the next 1,000, then the next 1,000, then the next 1,000, and then build your list on the outside, and it's pass in, 1, because then your list will be your full 1,000, 10,000 list, and you're actually passing through one at a time.
I see what you're doing. Okay.
And that way you can guarantee visually and actually what is going to be in your 1,000, 10,000 rows.
I see. Okay.
To me, that probably your best way to do this, because then you guarantee what 10,000 are going in for each branch.
Okay, I got you.
As long as the bank can accept, do they expect all 800,000 at one time, or they expect just 10,000 at a time, or a limit?
I got you. Cool. Yeah, I think I'll give that a go. If you guys are looking for topics for lunch and learns whenever people don't have questions, like batch processing large amounts of data may be a good one to hit, because I've struggled with that quite a bit, obviously.
And I'll definitely ask the question for sure.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
Okay, we don't have any other pre-submitted questions. I'll open up to the floor. Is there any questions we do have? Hello, Josh.
Hi, Tyler. Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, yep, I can hear. So what I'm working on is I have a process folder that is collecting files. And then in parallel, I have another process folder collecting financial forecasts. And also in parallel, I have another process folder calculating risk scores and generating a client scorecard. And I'm looking that each three process folders, I can relate them with each other. They're distinct process folders, however, they're of the same case.
Okay.
And
And
yeah,
you're-
hear your thoughts on how you would go about doing that. I have a naming convention for my process folder that collects files, and yeah, I'm just starting to think through what's the best way to relate the three process folders, so I know they're part of the same case.
Okay. Well, there is a couple of different ways to look at that.
Okay.
So let me just think a second. Does I have anything pre-built that I could show you that might be easier? Don't think I have anything pre-built. So what you're saying is you'll be able to add in a folder, really a folder structure inside of your case entities, right?
Also, yes. Mhm.
Okay. So if I go, trying to figure out where I stored my data at. I think so right here is my case activity. So this is your case activity where you can have all this work. There's two different ways to do this. So you could either in your process folders create a case identifier. So like each case has like C00049 or my actual ID underneath, where you can then do a fetch. So whenever you pull up a case, you can do a fetch of each one of those process folders of what data is included in them. Or you can nest a folder inside of here and have it as a folder inside of here that's actually stored as the parent folder of those process folders is actually the entity folder, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Okay.
So you pass in the entity folder ID and make that the parent folder of each one of those process folders you're creating. So it's a nested folder, or you can leave them as separate data structure folders inside of decisions in a separate folder. So you have all of your other process folder datas outside of here, where you can look at them individually and then just create a link to the case also. It all depends on, do you still need to view those other three process folders independently of the case, or can they all be always nested inside the case?
They will have to be viewed independently because I have different users. I have one user reviewing files, one user reviewing risk scoring, and I have another user reviewing financial forecasts. So yeah, they would have to be reviewed independently at some in the beginning.
Mhm.
But at the end, yeah, we're looking for a consolidated view.
And that consolidated view, is it be on a dashboard or on a form? Where's that consolidated view coming from?
Yeah, it would be a dashboard.
Okay, then what I would do is inside those process folders is add in the case ID as a field that's hidden, and just do fetch when you actually run the report for your dashboard. Do a fetch based on the case ID to those 3 process folders, and it'll bring those 3 process folders into the report. Do you understand what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense.
To me, that's probably the best and easiest way to do this if you want to keep them separate. Because since you want to keep them separate, you need to have a mechanism to fetch them for each case ID.
Okay, gotcha.
If you need to keep them separate, I would do the nested, add them to the parent folder of this case ID, this C004, and make the parent folder, and then it'd be nested inside that folder. But if they need to be independent, you can do that also. And the best part about that, Josh, is say you're in a lower screen, like inside of one of those process folders, and you need to fetch the case stuff. The case ID is in the process folder, so you can just fetch the case also using the case ID.
Okay, it makes sense. Appreciate it.
No problem. And that's the best part. I wouldn't use it in a naming convention. I would always just add in the unique identifier, the unique GUID that we install internally for the case ID, just so that it's always unique.
Okay.
Good questions. And I am, just so everybody on the call knows, I am going to add advanced processing as a webinar idea. So we have a webinar. Great. So there's no more questions in the chat or in the QA. If anyone wants to raise their hands, well, feel free to raise your hands. We do have 20 minutes left. Or if not, we can always just call it early and everybody can have 20 minutes back of their day. If it's your lunchtime, you can go eat quick bite to eat. If not, you can have 20 minutes back of your day. Well, I'm going to give everyone a couple more minutes to 12:40. If there's no more questions, feel free to drop off if you want to, or please put any questions in the chat or in the QA. If not, we'll go ahead and sign off here from Virginia Beach. No longer Chesapeake, but Virginia Beach. I hope everybody has a very good Thanksgiving, and everyone have a great rest of the day.